generations. And now, the power of two restores the one.
We got a bidet! Hey everybody, and welcome back to another video. In today's video, we are talking about our top 5 movies of 2023. Now, I do want to emphasize here that it's, our top 5, it's what we liked. It's not necessarily, where it ranks on Rotten Tomatoes. It doesn't necessarily mean that these are the top 5 that we ranked with our numbers throughout the year. It's just we sat down, we looked at all the movies that we saw, and put them in a list of what we thought was our top 5 best movies. So we're going to go ahead. We're going to start with number 5 and work our way up to the one that we thought is our favorite for the year. And just have some fun, talk about some good movies. So, kicking it off, my number 5 movie of 2023 was a controversial one. I will say it is Guardians of the Galaxy 3. I thoroughly enjoyed the movie. I thought it was kind of a nice breath of fresh air for Marvel. I haven't watched all of the shows on Disney Plus, but from what I've heard and seen in the media is that people were very negative about a lot of the projects that were coming out. And when Guardians came out, a lot of people were talking about how, like, oh my gosh, this is like one of the best things we've gotten in a long time. And I kind of felt the same way, even though I hadn't been watching much of this stuff. I love the characters from Guardians of the Galaxy, and I thought they did a great job. I wasn't a fan of the second movie, but very much a fan of the third movie.
Yeah, I remember watching this film very vividly. This one was one that was actually really triggering for me, so I did not enjoy the film personally. That's why if you go back and look at our kind of movie discussion, it's just Jeremy by himself because I just couldn't handle it. Uh, it's not on my worst list either because it wasn't for me, it doesn't necessarily mean it was a bad film, but it certainly wasn't one of my favorites either. So it's not in my top 5.
Yeah, and that was also a big thing that was discussed when the movie came out, is that there was a lot of uh, like they went there situations with the movie, and it was a little off-putting for a lot of people, and definitely like a trigger warning there for future reference. So what was your number 5?
My number 5 was Wonka. I really enjoyed this movie. I gave it a 10 out of 10 when we did our discussion. Not all of my top 5 are going to be in that scenario. I'm trying to be a little more, this is our first year doing ratings and stuff, and we didn't even start doing ratings until June. So not all of our movies are ones that we've actually rated, but ones that we've seen and discussed. So I'm trying to pull back a little bit on those reins of giving those 10 out of 10 so freely. But this was one that I thought was really fun, and I really enjoyed, the whole experience of seeing the movie with the family, and I felt like it was a good movie.
I'd say it was a good movie. Definitely worth. Let me back up. Definitely worth going to see with the family. It is very much the movie that, like, when they picked what movie should come out around Christmas time, that was a perfect one for everybody to go see. Of course, I had my nitpicks here and there with, the different things going on, but I feel like at the end of the day, it was a very good film.
Yeah. One of the big things I'm using for ranking my best films or favorite films of the year is how watchable they are, like for replayability. Would I want to watch this movie more than once and even more than twice? So that's kind of something I'm keeping in the back of my mind as we go through these. What one was in your number 4 slot?
My number four was a, a kind of a small experiment, quote unquote, for me, because I had never seen any of these movies in theaters, and it was my first time going to see one in theaters. And when it was actually one of the first films we saw in IMAX together when we, first started this whole movie discussion journey. And so my number four film is John Wick 4. I had not experienced those types of movies in theaters, and honestly, we had just like binge watched the first three before we saw this. Again, hadn't really seen them before, and I just thought it was a super cool movie. I got to see, Keanu Reeves in his element on the big screen. Uh,
Yeah.
all that, yeah, yeah. All those cool action sequences and the, amazing sound system for the IMAX. I really thought that that was a really cool movie for the year. And so my number four is John Wick 4.
It's interesting to have a sequel, or not, it's not a sequel, I guess, because it's not number 2 in the series, but it is
It's a
it's
sequel.
part of, yeah. What I was trying to get at is that a lot of times those types of movies don't do as well. And so the first 2 movies you name is third in a series and fourth in a series. So I think that's kind of interesting.
Which
I also really liked,
I was gonna say, to your point with like, being the fourth movie, how is it the top? Just wait until our worst movies. And there's a movie in there that's not gonna do so well that's, similar in that sense.
yeah. I also really enjoyed John Wick, but it wasn't in my top 5. I just didn't have room for it quite. That's more like an honorable mention for me. Number 4, I had Blue Beetle. That was another one that I was really kind of surprised by how much I enjoyed it. I'm not typically super into DC superhero movies. It's not that they're necessarily bad, it's just not something I'd ever really gotten into. But the trailer looked really good, and it was a very enjoyable experience, and I thought it was a good superhero movie in my opinion. Not a whole lot more to say other than that.
I thought it was a fun movie. It was one of those, you got your popcorn, you're just sitting back and enjoying it. The family was fun. George Lopez. I'm kind of like a depends on the situation for like depends on the show whether I like him or not. And I did like him in this movie. He was cool. And I hope, with us liking, this movie, that this Blue Beetle will be part of DC's future and the people that were already a part of it. Because I know they're like throwing away a bunch of actors and actresses from their originals and making new people come up. So I hope they keep these people. Moving on to number three, I'm curious to see if this made your list. My number three is Dungeons and Dragons, Honor Among Thieves. I thought this was really cool. We recently learned Dungeons and Dragons a year or two ago. Seems like time flies. But it was really fun to be able to watch this film and be like, yeah, that definitely would happen, in a Dungeons and Dragons session. That's crazy. We saw some of our own characters kind of through some of these people. And so I just thought it was a super enjoyable film. I'm really hoping that they get some sort of sequel out of it. I've heard rumor that they're not going to, but I feel like it was a good enough film where they should at least try for a second. Um,
Spoiler alert, that was my number 1 slot. So thank you for
Whoa!
stealing my thunder. I also really enjoyed that movie. It was one of those that I feel like it probably had a really bad stigma with it because a lot of people think Dungeons and Dragons is really nerdy.
Hmm.
Um, but as
Or-
somebody who has played Dungeons and Dragons, I don't feel like it was really that nerdy of a film. And they also had some pretty good actors in there. I mean, they had Chris Pine. Um,
Michelle Rodriguez.
thank you. I knew who she was, but couldn't think of her name. There's
There's a couple others too.
The guy from Detective Pikachu, the kid, he was in there too. I apologize, don't know his name.
I'm looking them up right now.
Yes, because like I mean he's, a newer, fresher actor, but he's been in some things. But it just oh gosh, they had a
Justice Smith.
okay.
We also
Um
had Sophia Lillis. I think she played in It or something.
oh yeah. The
Yeah.
guy, the bad guy, he was pretty famous too.
Yep. Hugh Grant. He's in
Thank you.
Waco.
Yep. Yeah, so I mean there was a lot of well-known actors in that film, and I think that's probably why it didn't do as well as they were hoping. And what I mean by that is that their budget probably was bigger than what the film was able to pay off, if that makes any sense. Um,
Yeah, so like they went all in on the actors and actresses, which is also interesting because right around the time that this movie was coming out, I was some of the things in the media popping up were like these different D&D sessions that celebrities were doing, and it came out that Michelle Rodriguez is huge into Dungeons and Dragons, and so is like Vin Diesel and all them, and they play together. And so I got to like watch Michelle Rodriguez play Dungeons and Dragons on YouTube, and it made like perfect sense for her to be a part of the film. So it was not only did they get big names, but they also got big names that cared about the franchise or series, whatever you want to call it.
yeah. Yep. So I really liked that film. That one was number one for me. So going in order here, you just did number three, I believe. So my number three on my list was Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. And I feel like that's one that's probably going to be a little controversial
Hmm.
just because a lot of people didn't necessarily like the passing of the torch and though
Whip.
all the politics behind that and whatnot. But putting the politics aside of that, I feel like that really doesn't take away from the film itself. This was the first Indiana Jones movie that I've gotten to see in a theater, and just again, I really liked it. I loved all the adventure and the action, and sure there were some parts that weren't quite perfect, but I think you're going to see that with any movie.
I feel like there was a handful of things in 2023 that got a lot of hate for arguably no reason. For instance, right now I'm playing the Gollum game, and you can see those being uploaded to the channel. Uh, I really don't think that game should have got as much crap as it got. And same thing with Indiana Jones. I feel like people are losing the sense of going to the movie theater, sitting down and just enjoying and just kind of like turning your mind off a little bit and then just having fun. Whereas it's, oh, Kathleen Kennedy messed up Star Wars, so now we're gonna put that lens on Indiana Jones, and it's like you're never gonna enjoy another Lucasfilm project if you don't cut that out. So,
Yeah, if you're always looking for what's wrong and how it's tying to today's society, it's going to take away from the experience for sure.
right. That is a nice number three. Let's see. Let me go. All right, my number two is, in my opinion, like when I was going through our list, I was like, you know what? That movie was pretty lit. I liked it a lot. My number two is Talk to Me. That was the horror film where if you grab the hand and you say, talk to
Hmm.
me, then, dead people start talking to you. And there's this whole, crazy premise that happens that I thought was really interesting, really well done. And I thought to myself, I'm really hoping there's some sort of sequel out of this. And they are coming out with a sequel to this movie. So I'm very excited to see Talk to Me 2, which will probably, I think it's actually just called Talk to Me, and it's a number two in the middle, so that'd be kind of funny. Um, yeah, very much looking forward to the sequel there.
Yeah, that one was pretty good too. But I definitely wouldn't put it in my top five.
No?
I feel like it was above average, but it wasn't necessarily one of like the best. My number two We're number two, right?
Yep, we're on number 2.
My number two was No Hard Feelings. That one was just like straight out of left field, I feel. So it was Jennifer Lawrence. I haven't seen anything from her in quite a while, or at least I haven't. Again, you're probably starting to pick up on a theme for my favorite movies or my top movies of 2023. A lot of them are just fun watches, and that's the most enjoyable for me at least. Um, there were a lot of just really unexpected humorous components to that film, and the unexpected level of it, I think, is what put it above a stereotypical comedy. I feel like there weren't a whole lot of actual comedies that came out this past year, and so this one, it was up there for me.
I would also say there's just not a lot of comedies that are coming out and that are hitting, with audiences. Because I know there's been a couple that come out on streaming that we've seen, and we're just like, yeah, I guess it was good. But none that have been like straight fire or up to this level. And I think just like how I said, Guardians had a breath of fresh air for comic book films and Marvel films. I think this movie had a nice um, breath of fresh air for some comedies that come to theaters as opposed to streaming. And yeah, there were definitely a lot of unexpected things that happened. I bet nobody saw coming that Jennifer Lawrence was going to be straight naked on screen. And yes, that was her. That as soon as that movie came out, that was the big question everybody had. Uh, so yeah, once like even that happened, I was like, oh my gosh, what is going to happen next? So yeah, it was a very good movie, enjoyable, and it was cool even to see some of the other actors and actresses in there as well.
Now,
So
you already know my number one because it was Dungeons and Dragons. So what was your number one?
so my number one is a little bit of bias, but Rotten Tomatoes has my back on this one. Okay, everybody. I know I said in the beginning it's not about what they say, but they are in my corner that this was a good movie. My number one film is Saw 10. It was my most anticipated movie of the year. I would say that it didn't let me down one bit. Audiences scores, thrived with it. It not only gave us a new Saw film, but it also gave us a whole other way to really experience a Saw film. And what I mean by that is, in the past, it was very much someone's thrown into a trap right away. The game starts going, and they have an hour to complete it. And basically, us as an audience is following them through that hour. And what we get from this new movie is we get to learn a bit more about John. We get to learn more about who he is as a person, and some of those like beginning stages of when things went crazy. And so, I really liked Saw 10. It's a welcome addition to the series, and I look forward to what's next because we already know that Saw 11 comes out in September, and I'm very much.
Woohoo!
So just a recap, uh, Sarah, what was your top five?
Um, Number five, I had Wonka. Four was Blue Beetle. Three, Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. Two was No Hard Feelings. And number one for me was Dungeons and Dragons Honor Among Thieves.
Nice. My top five, just as a reminder, was Guardians of the Galaxy at number five. I should go with five like that.
Volume
Number
three.
what?
That was volume three.
Yes, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 was my number five film. Number four was John Wick 4. Number three was Dungeons and Dragons Honor Among Thieves. Number two was Talk to Me. And number one was Saw 10. So those were our top five movies of 2023. Again, I have to reiterate, this is not based on, what Rotten Tomatoes said for everything throughout the year. This isn't about necessarily all of our ratings and this is how they fell with the numbers. We looked at the list and said, what did we enjoy? Even for me, I was like, what would I really want to watch again right now? And which is interesting because I said that about Indiana Jones and it wasn't on my top list, but I still think it was a great movie. So If you enjoy this type of video or you're looking forward to our top 5 worst movies of 2023, make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. That video will be out shortly after this one. Drop us a like if you liked the video. Drop us a comment letting us know your top 5 movies of 2023. And then, as always, everybody, thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.